Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Peggy Kurtz. This is a meeting of the Lower Hudson Group of Sierra Club. Welcome to everybody. We meet monthly. This is a public meeting where we focus each month generally. We focus on one particular big topic, and then we also leave time after the speaker and the discussion, we leave time for other more local issues. So this evening, our topic is very much a local and larger issue. We'll get to that in just a minute. And just we'll get to some announcements as we go, maybe after our speaker. Before we begin, though, I just want to announce our next meeting, which is Monday, November 17th. As some of you know, we've been doing a series. We started out by calling it a year-long series. I think we're going to have to keep going. It's on the crisis to raise awareness of the crisis of extinctions and the loss of biodiversity. This is another crisis. It is somewhat related, but it's not the same as the climate crisis. And I think very few people are aware of it, very few decision makers. So we're really trying to educate ourselves and the public about it, and then to begin to kind of think about, get our minds around what we can do to address this equally serious crisis. So the next meeting that focuses on that topic specifically in our next public meeting is Monday, November 17th at 7 o'clock. I think it's a fascinating topic. The title is The Unseen Fungal Networks Beneath Our Feet, the basis of nearly all life. So we're going to be talking with a biologist, and she's going to be talking, first of all, about these fungal networks to explain what we mean when we say the basis of nearly all life, and about this symbiosis between what's above ground and what's below ground that's so critical to life. And then also about how these fungal networks are increasingly endangered as well as things above ground, as the habitat above ground is increasingly threatened. So let's start with our speaker this evening. We're very fortunate to have with us cancer researcher and environmental activist, Dr. Courtney Williams. She has been a longtime leader. She's really led the movement to shut down the large 40-year-old Wheelabrator incinerator in Peekskill, where she lives. She holds a PhD. She's founder of the Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions, and she's advocating not only for the closure of this incinerator, which is Westchester County's largest industrial air polluter, but also really working to try to advocate for zero waste solutions for our trash. So Courtney will be speaking, and then that'll be followed by Q&A, and then after that we'll be talking about some other local issues. Courtney?
I would just like to ask people to turn their video on because because usually people do, and I think it makes for a friendlier meeting. So
I think that's true. It's always
yeah,
a little bit off-putting to talk to a bunch of dark screens. You should be able to, we do ask you to hold your questions until the end or to put them in the chat. Okay, Courtney, take it away.
Awesome. Do the slides look good for everybody?
I do see them, yeah.
Great. Okay. So thanks so much. And I've got limited real estate on my screen, but I did open the chat. So if you pop it in there and I catch it, I'll answer it as I go. So thank you, Peggy and George, for inviting me. Thank you all for having me. I feel like Sierra Club's like the OG zero waste org. So I'm excited to be here speaking with you all tonight. So my day job, I am a cancer researcher, And so I kind of think that, like, my 9 to 5 is cancer, is trying to treat cancer, and my 5 to 9 is trying to prevent cancer. And I know many of you for many years from working on the Algonquin pipeline expansion with SAPE and Synergy and Resist Spectra. And that effort opened my eyes to the environmental justice issues facing Peekskill. And so that led me to found WAS, Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions. So, what is WAS? It is an alliance of community organizations from Westchester County working to close the Wheelabrator Westchester incinerator operated by Win Waste Innovations in Peekskill, where the county's trash is burned. And as Peggy said, we don't just want to close this because I am not in the business of making environmental justice communities. So I don't want to export this problem. I want to solve this problem. So this is Peekskill's riverfront. This is the Hudson here. And this is an image taken by a drone from a Peekskill resident. And what you see, to the uninitiated, you see the pollution, but that's really only a small bit of what's there. So this is what I see when I look. So I mentioned the pipeline, the fracked gas transmission system of the Algonquin pipeline running underneath the Hudson River and underneath Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant. That plant's being decommissioned on top of those gas pipelines, but we have 40 years of irradiated spent fuel stored there. We have decades of radioactive wastewater leaking into the soil to contaminate it. We have 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater in the spent fuel pools that Holtec wants to dump. We have a gypsum plant that is a major polluter. We have the trash incinerator, which is the #1 largest industrial air polluter in Westchester County. Off the screen, but producing this plume, is the BASF chemical plant. We have the Hudson River laden with PCBs, and we have the bomb trains on the Rockland side carrying crude and refined oil north and south to Albany. And this is what makes an EJ community, all of these things at once in one area. And we're fighting to make sure the nuke plant is safe. We're trying to stop another expansion of this gas pipeline. And frankly, this trash incinerator is a solvable problem, and that's what we'll talk about tonight. So what is the problem? What are we throwing away? So on the right is a pie chart put out by the DEC of municipal solid waste. And I'd ask everyone to look at that pie chart and then give a thought, and feel free to drop it in the chat if you want. What percentage of this pie chart does your community already have the means to divert from the incinerator? For my community in Peekskill, depending plastics is complicated because so little are actually recyclable, but it's probably around 80%. So why are we sending this to to the incinerator, and why are other communities sending it to a landfill, right? We already have the programs in place that could just be expanded to divert the vast majority of this. I mean, look at that paper and food scraps, right? We could get to the 50% just about right there. So what does New York choose to do with their waste? Well, actually, we do a lot of burning of garbage. So we have more incinerators than any other state in America. We used to be tied with Florida, but their Doral incinerator caught fire, and it's near some Trump resorts. And so the Trumps are not going to allow that to be rebuilt there. And so we get to be the best of the worst and #1 in trash incinerators. But we are not too shabby in landfills either. So the orange color, our municipal MSW, you'll see it over and over again on these slides, stands for municipal solid waste. And so you can see all of those municipal solid waste incinerators, which means that's what communities are choosing to do with their waste versus, say, an industry. But then you can also see we have industrial waste monofill landfills, like that take the ash from incinerators, and CD&D, that stands for construction and demolition debris. So we've got a lot of those too. And not surprising to anyone, the vast majority of landfills and incinerators are in EJ communities. So that EJ stands for Environmental Justice Communities. And those are predominantly Black and Brown communities. And on the right side is an infographic from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences showing, Latinos are exposed to 63% more air pollution than you would expect if it was equitably distributed. African Americans, Black Americans, are exposed to 56% more than if it was equitably distributed. And white people, less, minus 17% than if it was equitably distributed. So we are, as a society, choosing to put this kind of polluting infrastructure and harmful infrastructure in Black and Brown communities. Peekskill is a predominantly Black and Brown community. So what's the impact of that? Well, this map is from the New York State Climate, what is it called? Climate Action Committee, which basically years ago, many of you know, we passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA. And the goal there was for it to be one of the most groundbreaking, forward-thinking climate laws in the nation, and to specifically dedicate funds to mitigate climate to the communities that are most put upon by that by the polluting infrastructure. So in order to decide who gets that money, they had to come up with some criteria to decide who has it the worst. And so they came up with what they call the disadvantaged communities criteria. And so they looked at environmental burden, meaning what is, burden of pollution and infrastructure, but also burden in terms of like flooding and things that happen as a result of climate change. And then the other portion of that was to look at the characteristics of the population and their vulnerability. So if you look on the left hand in blue, you can see like asthma, ED is emergency department. So ER visits for asthma, for COPD, heart attack hospitalizations, infants born at a low birth weight, seniors, people with disabilities, without health insurance, people who can't afford their energy bills, poor housing stock, all of those things. And then in looking at the environmental burden, you can see active landfills, et cetera. This is my census tract. So I live here. It is also the census tract where the Peekskill trash incinerator is located. And you can see this criteria here, municipal solid waste combustors. Overall, my census tract has a higher environmental burden than 98% of census tracts in New York State. And our vulnerability score is higher than 84% of census tracts in New York State. I am not typical of my census tract. I'm a white lady. I have a high educational achievement, access. I can afford to pay my electric bill. I can take my kids to the doctor, etc. A lot of my neighbors are not that lucky. So for instance, when I hear the incinerator blasting at 1 a.m, I know it's venting. I know because I can afford and have installed a purple air monitor in my backyard. I know that PM 2.5 is spiking as are all the other emissions from the incinerator. I get up, I close the windows, I go in my kids' rooms, close all the windows, turn on the air conditioner if it's hot, run a fan if it's stuffy, because I can afford my electric bill. If my kid has trouble breathing, I have PTO, paid time off from work. I have a car. I can drive him to the doctor. I have insurance. I can cover the visit and the asthma medication or whatever he might need. A lot of my neighbors do not have that ability. And that is why it's really important to think about environmental justice communities that are suffering from our refusal to sustainably and equitably deal with our waste. And I should say, all of this is completely legal. So the incinerator, the air permit for it expired in 2021. The BASF chemical plant, also in my census tract, their air permit to pollute expired in 2017. DEC has done nothing. So they are operating on permits that standards and limits of which were set ages ago. Should also be mentioned, when they are having a malfunction or shutting down or starting up, as long as it was unavoidable, they can exceed emission standards as much as they want. So legal doesn't make it right. We know this. Also, legal doesn't make it safe. Those emission standards are not safety standards. And when you're in an EJ community, for instance, this is like the word cloud from hell that I thought that I made up when I was thinking of the cumulative impacts my community is facing. We have all the pollution from the incinerator and the chemical plant and all these other things, PM 2.5, mercury, cadmium, lead, PFAS, PVCs, microplastics. We have the strontium, the tritium, all that stuff from the nuclear plant. We have VOCs from and particulate matter from all of these pollution sources. But then a lot of my neighbors, food insecurity, language barriers, immigration status, disability or disease already caused by these sources of pollution. So this is why we really need to act on waste, because Peekskill, in this case, it's what I know best, but communities across the state hosting incinerators and landfills are dealing with all of these similar problems. So, it's bad for people, but it's also bad for the planet, right? So on the left is looking at what can be diverted just in terms of compost from most of our waste. And I don't need to tell this group, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. We know when you put organics in a landfill, they produce methane, right? So when food waste and yard waste rot in an anaerobic environment, they turn stuff into methane. We know methane we can haggle over if it's 86% or more or less more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, but we know it's bad. We also know incinerators run on fracked gas. So when you put stuff like food scraps and yard waste that are wet into the incinerator, they don't burn well. And in order to keep those emissions as low as possible, the incinerator needs to burn at a hot temperature. So they actually are hooked into the Algonquin pipeline, our incinerator in Peekskill, and use fracked gas to burn the garbage. And we know how bad fracking is. We know natural gas is methane. We know how much leaks from the wellhead to the gathering lines, to the transmission lines, to the distribution lines. So basically, our waste system is just a methane source, whether it's a landfill or an incinerator. So everyone's like, oh, well, if we're not going to burn it, are we going to send it to a landfill? I don't want to send it to a landfill. To which I say, don't buy the binary. This is not a binary choice. The solid waste industry wants you to think it's a binary choice because they own haulers and landfills and incinerators, and they want to get money from you and your municipal government, but it is not a binary. We have an alternative. So right now, this is our economy, right? We extract resources, we destroy the planet in the process, we make whatever it is, and then very quickly that thing breaks or is used up or was only meant to be used one time, goes in the garbage, and we're sending 2,500 tons of waste to the trash incinerator in Peekskill every day, just in Westchester County alone. But we have an alternative. We can go to a zero waste economy, also called a circular economy, where we're not extracting all of the resources. We've already extracted them. So we make something, we keep it and repair it and reuse it as much as we possibly can. And when its lifespan is over, we basically recover those resources, right? All those rare earths in the case of electronics, all of the, whether it's paper or food scraps, like that is not trash, right? That's something you can turn into compost, into more paper, into more cardboard, into more electronics. So you recover it and then you produce something new with it. And so now your extraction is way less and your disposal is way less. And zero waste as a definition, it's never actually zero, but it's usually around 90%. So in Westchester, that would mean 250 tons a day instead of 2,500 tons a day, which is a really big difference. So this is the definition of zero waste from the Zero Waste International Alliance: the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. And I didn't touch on the water part, like, because landfills, there's a lot of leachate that comes out, and folks should look into the leachate loophole. There's an effort here in New York on that some of you may already be involved in, because some of our municipal wastewater facilities are taking that leachate from landfills and putting them into our water treatment systems. So this circular economy is possible. And, I think I've gone through, like, we're talking about the planet, why it's better, health impacts, etc. But it's also a big hit to our pocketbook to burn garbage or landfill garbage. So zero waste is better for our purse strings. So it creates jobs. WAS commissioned a white paper from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance to look at, that's a typo. It should be 1,000 jobs could be created if Westchester County moved to zero waste. We have a handful of jobs at the trash incinerator currently. We could expand and hire a lot more people in jobs that are not killing neighbors, by moving to zero waste and sorting all of our trash, reusing it, diverting it to other to be reused and repurposed. It also conserves resources. So why extract new stuff and so you can discard what you have, right? Like, why let valuable rare earth sit in a landfill? Why put your food scraps in the landfill when it could be compost for your garden, right? It also saves healthcare dollars and protects public health, right? So in 2021, NRDC did a study and they estimated that air pollution costs Americans more than $820 billion a year. That's $2,500 a person that we are paying because we're choosing to burn our garbage and generate air pollution with fossil fuels. It also mitigates the impact of the climate crisis. So just as a snapshot, in 2017, the wind waste incinerator in Peekskill generated almost 800,000 tons of CO2 equivalents. And that's just emissions from the stack. That's not hauling the garbage or hauling the ash that is generated. And for every 3 pounds of trash that's burned, you get a pound of toxic ash that then needs to be transported to a landfill. So imagine if we moved to zero waste, we would eliminate those 800,000 tons. And they're also self-sustaining, right? So the municipal compost pile won't fail catastrophically and catch on fire and have the Trumps opposing construction of a new compost pile. The trash incinerator is over 40 years old. It's got a useful lifespan. Your compost pile doesn't have a useful lifespan, right? Like, you just it keeps self-sustaining over time. So it really is also an answer in terms of cost savings to use zero waste solutions. And this is from that zero waste, the white paper that we commissioned on jobs. So it's over 1,000. And then just in general, it's the right thing to do. I don't think any of us are so enamored of burning garbage or having it rot in a landfill that we're willing to sacrifice the health and well-being of our neighbors or having a livable planet. So really, it is always the right time to do the right thing. And in this case, when people learn about these problems with landfills and incinerators, they don't want to participate in that system. But so how do we get off of landfilling and incineration and these unsustainable solutions? Well, the Sierra Club's on board. So these are all old now, but basically we're with you. WAS is with you, Sierra Club, on opposing incineration and moving to these reuse to more sustainable practices. So this is what's called the zero waste hierarchy. And what you can see is there are like different levels of acceptability. So the first thing we want to do is rethink and redesign stuff. We want stuff that will last, redesign the product, redesign the packaging, to just not have things that are meant to be garbage from their inception. And then we want to reduce as much waste as we can. So, like, I'm using, here's my drink in a ball jar, right? My drinking glass is a ball jar. Instead of like, I bring my lunch in an old apple butter jar instead of buying something new or throwing that jar away. We don't need to keep making more and more. We can reduce what we need and just be happy with what we have. We can reuse everything we can. Recycling and composting. Recycling here, I would say, for me, is specific to non-plastics. Plastics are, and recycling them is a myth. We need to just do away with the plastics entirely. But we can recycle glass and metal. Metal, for instance, infinitely recyclable. We can compost all of our food scraps, turn them into turn them into additives for our soil, and then material recovery, like recovering those rare earths so that we don't need to do more mining. And then residuals management means the last of the things that we just cannot get in other ways. And we need to do this, and it might require landfilling, but we can't dump it on some other community, right? If it's not acceptable for your community in your neighborhood, then it's not acceptable for any community in any neighborhood. And then incineration and waste to energy is just wholly considered unacceptable in this hierarchy. And I do want to point out, like, a lot of people cite the EPA having said that incineration is better than landfilling. They recently admitted they don't have data to back up that assertion, but the incinerator industry relies heavily on that. The EPA, prior to the current administration, had agreed to revisit those recommendations. That is unlikely to happen anytime soon, right? But so arguably, it is less of a climate change factor to landfill waste. But as I said, I don't make EJ communities. I live in one. I don't want this for any other community. My goal is for Westchester to take a page from Ulster County's book and say, we're going to manage our waste sustainably and keep it here and not make other communities deal with it. But it's important that we need to change this system of waste. And it's not the responsibility of the frontline community to solve the problem. And oh yeah, it's not the sole responsibility of the frontline community to solve the waste problem, right? If you get hit by a drunk driver crossing the street and you go to your town board meeting and say, this crosswalk is unsafe, I got hit by a car, they don't say, okay, Judy, then what's the solution? You personally, as victim of this crime, must solve the traffic and pedestrian safety problem. We wouldn't do that for other problems, but we seem to really like to do that for environmental justice issues. And our lawmakers and our municipal governments and county and state governments are going to be key to changing this. And it benefits all of us and to have cleaner air and a healthier, more sustainable planet. So look at this system that I've talked about. Can any one of us accomplish this by ourselves? No. I tell everybody, generating waste is not a personal moral failing. When you live in a society and a system that is designed on things being disposable, single use, made of plastic, etc. If everyone on this call spent their lives never generating another piece of garbage, we all just committed, we're never generating garbage ever again, it would not help the planet, it would not help Peekskill or any other frontline community anywhere, because we will not be pushed into the trap of personal responsibility. This is not a carbon footprint BP kind of trap to make us feel personally guilty about generating garbage like the fossil fuel industry tries to make us do about our carbon footprint. This is a system problem. It's going to require a systems solution. And Courtney Williams from Peekskill does not have all the answers. Don't tell my husband and children that, but I don't have all the answers. But we do have some of the answers. What we really need is, just like we got experts and experts in all different areas. We got our elected officials, our civil servants, everybody working together to build the current waste management system, or I should say waste mismanagement system. We need to get everybody together to make a new system. And it's not going to happen with Courtney and a plucky group of volunteers, right? We need our government and the power of systemic action and change to make that happen. Baby steps still move us forward, right? So I do these things. I compost, I recycle, I decrease my consumption. My shirt thrifted, my sweater thrifted, my drink, ball jar. Like, I do reuse. I'm a member of my local Buy Nothing group, etc. I repair what I've got. I look for places to reduce waste around my house with my personal health and beauty products. My kids' school supplies are all from Retake Remake here in Peekskill. And I tell you, the binder that survived 35 years at IBM is much better equipped to survive 8th grade than the binder I could buy brand new at Staples or Walmart. So I do all of these personal responsibility things, but when it comes down to my time, I know that I get a bigger bang for my buck helping do systemic change with you all than just by me personally never making garbage again. And I love this, and I'm sure you've all seen this graphic of like the importance of organizing, right? So right now it seems like the waste industry is the big fish, and we're kind of hopeless up against them. But if we all work together, we can overcome that and we can force a change, especially with municipal solid waste, where it's our own government saying that this is the solution they've chosen. We can push for an alternative solution. And so some of these things are like, get your municipality to compost if they're not already. Push them for curbside food scraps recycling. Push them to do more recycling in your community. Single-use items, like get legislation passed for those things. I'll talk more about pay as you throw, what that is. But really, we're gonna need legislation. We're gonna need system change, not just optional, preaching to the choir, already having the converts do it. We need everybody doing it. So what are some of those system changes and like some of that legislation that I mentioned? So one category is called extended producer responsibility. So the idea of that is to make producers responsible for the product after it's been used, right? So if you buy something, like my son is always wanting like really crappy electronic devices like a radio controlled car or a drone or whatever, and invariably like the second time, if not the first time he uses it, it breaks and it's garbage. And now I've got e-waste that Westchester County needs to deal with. So I have to drive it to the HMRF in Valhalla and put it in the e-waste bin. And now Westchester County needs to figure out what to do with it. We need to make the maker of the crappy electronic device responsible for their crappy product that breaks right away and now becomes Westchester's problem. So instead of us with our tax dollars paying to manage that, the producer needs to do that. And this is a fraught problem because they'll weasel out of it as best they can, but you can make effective extended producer responsibility bills. Another is right to repair. So how many of us have made the decision like, The screen on your phone broke. Do you pay a bajillion dollars to take it back to the Apple store or the Verizon store and have them fix it? Or do you take it to the guy at the kiosk in the mall and pay $50 and have that person fix it? But it voids your warranty and it voids your insurance on your phone, etc. That's kind of the trap that they get you in. Ditto for cars, right? So New York State did pass a Digital Fair Repair Act. It's problematic. It's not awesome, but it's a step in the right direction. But we need more of this, right? So, like, how many of us have been in the situation? My um, washing machine broke, and it was only like 2 years old, and we paid because we didn't want to get a new one, $150 for the guy to come from the the certified repair person to come and be like, yeah, it'd be like $400 to get a new motherboard or whatever was broken if you want to replace it. Brand new would be less than $300. That makes no sense. But that is how these products are made, which is that you can't repair them because they won't sell you the parts, or the parts are too expensive. So there are right to repair model legislation available. We need more of it. But it's also, we kind of need it at the federal level, because sometimes it would only apply to things manufactured in, say, New York State, if it was a state law. But a la all the tariffs we have, a lot of our products are not made here in the US. So there's work to be done, but right to repair is an entire area of legislation that can make for this kind of systemic change. I had mentioned pay as you throw earlier. It's also called Save Money and Reduce Trash, which stands for SMART. The idea is that it makes more obvious to us how much garbage we're making and how much it costs to dispose of that garbage. So instead of having our waste pickup just rolled into our taxes where we never really see it, we have to pay per bag of trash. So you go to your municipal government or your local grocery store, and they have bags. These are from the city of Waterville, Maine, for example, and you pay however much it would cost to throw away that much garbage for the garbage bag. And so if you make a lot of garbage, you're going to have to buy a lot of bags and pay a lot of money. It really makes it obvious to you, like, oh, if I recycle this, I don't pay. If I compost this, I don't pay. If I donate this at the thrift store, I don't pay. If I repair this, I don't pay. And it works. So Massachusetts towns that have pay-as-you-throw systems generated an average of 1,200 pounds of trash per household in 2020, compared to over 1,700 pounds of trash. That's a 30% reduction. So imagine if we could do this countywide or statewide and just make it really obvious to everyone how much it costs for their garbage. I mean, I walk around my neighborhood and there's homes, I know 3 people live there and they've got 5 huge garbage bags out front. I don't know how. If they had to pay this way, would they put 4 huge garbage bags out, or would they figure out a way to reduce their waste? So this falls under the extended producer responsibility type of legislation, but it's active here in New York and we need to work on it, is the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act. And Beyond Plastics is really leading the charge on this. Is it a perfect bill? No. Is it weakened from what Beyond Plastics originally proposed? Yes. But will it move us in the right direction? Absolutely. So it's called PREA for short because it's a mouthful, but it would reduce plastic packaging by 30% over the next 12 years. By 2052, all plastic, all of it, all packaging from plastic to metal would need to have a recycling rate of 75%. It would prohibit 17 of the packaging's worst toxic chemicals and materials, including all PFAS. So those are the forever chemicals we often hear about. And these kinds of things, PFAS, PVC, lead, mercury, Huge concern for communities with incinerators because the incinerators are a huge source of these pollutants. It would prohibit things like chemical recycling. So you might hear pyrolysis, chemical recycling. Incinerators are sometimes called waste to energy plants. These are all just euphemisms and special creative vocab words that the industry comes up with to try to mask their true intentions. PREA would also put a modest fee on packaging that would be paid by the product producers to basically go to local taxpayers to help us offset the lasting impacts of the packaging pollution. And it would also establish a new Office of the Inspector General to ensure that the companies comply with the new law. So there is a lobby day happening on January 13th up in Albany. If you Google it, you're not going to find it because the packaging and plastics industry is hot on our heels on this. But if you go to the website bit.ly, so bit.ly/1-13-26, or scan the QR code there, it'll take you to the page with more info. There's a free bus from Westchester, from Tarrytown. And I don't know if there's one from Rockland. There is, and it also stops up in Kingston. And there's ones from New York City as well. So you can get on the bus. The other is, oh, I didn't put the name of it on here. Bigger, Better Bottle Bill. This one rolls off the tongue better than PREA. But as many of you know, we've been doing a nickel deposit on recycling for a very, very, very long time. And this bill would up it to 10 cents. That would incentivize, it would also make it all bottles. So not just soda bottles, but water bottles, orange juice bottles, liquor bottles, every bottle. And this would allow for more incentivization of recycling, right? So people would be more likely to return the bottles, or pickers, canners who go through and pick up recycling would be able to make more of a living doing it. It would raise the handling fee paid by the beverage manufacturers to help with that, and it would also move towards refill, right? So we used to get Coke bottle, like when you go abroad, right? They all use glass bottles, and you leave it at the restaurant or you return it to the store and they refill it. We could do that here. So Bigger, Better Bottle Bill, the website for that effort is bottlebill40.org. And this I found, I'm like almost done now, but I threw this in because as I was like Googling to prepare for this presentation, I don't know how old this is from your chapter, because it's got a goal of establish a safe statewide ban on the disposal of food scraps by 2013. So it must be really old, but if we can resurrect this whole platform, I'm down for it. Because yeah, it looks like implementation, waste reduction, problem would have been solved. We would have been already 85% reduced 5 years ago. So let's resurrect this whole deal and make this happen. But so who's doing this? How feasible is it? It is feasible. Other places are doing it. I mentioned Ulster County. They've committed to being zero waste and not exporting any waste. I forget what year they said, 2040 maybe. Lexington, Massachusetts, zero waste. Austin, Texas, they've set their goal to be zero waste. Montgomery County, Maryland, moving to zero waste. So this is entirely feasible. So if your municipal government is making like it's not, they're lying to you. Other places are doing it. There's no reason where you live can't do this. It's happening. And then my last slide is just a plug. Our next, WAS has a zero waste task force. It meets once per month for 1 hour. There's info, there's discussion, and there's action. Boom, you're done. Our next meeting is November 19th, 7:30 p.m. on Zoom, and it's a status update on waste in Westchester. We'll be updating people on the county's waste reduction study, but also getting everyone prepped to participate in the county budget process to ensure funding for zero waste solutions in that budget. And then we're going to do an Ask Me Anything. So if you've got any random question that you couldn't find the answer to, if we don't know the answer, we'll help you find the answer. But we have a different topic every month. We're already planning for next year. We've got tours of the Compost Ed facility scheduled. We've got a tour of the municipal recoveries facility in Yonkers already scheduled. We always have a youth focused one. So we're already planning ahead, but we've done things on PFAS, on air quality, on, public health, all different topics. If you want to register, that's the link there, wasppeakskill.org/meeting. We also have a YouTube channel. So if any of our old meetings on compost or anything like that are of interest to you, you can find them on YouTube. And I am a scientist by training, and so it's really data or get out of here. So that QR code will take you to our fact sheet. So a lot of what I've shared, like emissions data, health data, all that kind of stuff, you can find on that fact sheet. You don't need to take my word for any of it. And with that, that was my last slide.
Well, thank you so much, Courtney. That was excellent. A lot of really valuable information, things that I didn't know, including about the number of incinerators and that it was the largest polluter. So we want to open it up now to questions. I just want to, before we open it up to questions, I want to point out that there are 2 repair cafes coming up. They're a lot of fun. If you start to think in the next couple of weeks about the things, the smaller things that you have, like lamps and trying to think, jewelry, sewing things, whatever, you can take them to the repair cafe, and very often the person who's doing the repair will also teach you how to do repairs of simple things as well. So there's one actually in Peekskill on November 8th at the Elks Lodge, and there's one in Rockland County. The next one is a Saturday, November 8th from 11:30 to 2:30. It's at the Pearl River United Methodist Church. Maybe I'll put the address into the chat for people. So I really recommend it. It's just fun and it's a learning place to learn. So I just want to start with a question. Can you talk a little bit more, and then please, you should be able to unmute yourselves at this point or to put your questions into the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about the waste to energy plants and the pyrolysis? Because one was proposed for Rockland County. My sense is this is something we're going to see a lot more of in the future. And they're saying, oh no, this is completely different. There's no emissions from it. You're going to create waste. You're going to turn waste into good energy. I have my own thoughts about it, but I really want to hear, your thoughts about what's wrong with that reasoning.
Yeah. So pyrolysis, chemical recycling, all those things, it's kind of like natural gas is a bridge fuel or clean coal. Like it's all just like industry speak to like whenever we get wise, right? They change the name. Like so we have to start all over again educating people about these things. And that's basically what that is. Waste to energy is just burning garbage. And it generates a tiny amount of power. If you look at the data, like per kilowatt hour of power generated, the emissions from an incinerator are worse than coal. So for generating power, you'd be better off from an emissions standard burning coal. That is how polluting it is.
But they were telling us, and we in the end we looked at it very carefully and we opposed it, and I can talk a little bit about why, but they were telling us there were going to be no emissions.
So from the pyrolysis plant, that's also complete and utter baloney. So these things, keep in mind, like a lot of times they kind of answer on a technicality. So no emission, they might say like, oh, there's going to be no emissions. Odds are that they mean, oh, we won't exceed emission standards or like some kind of double speak situation like that. so I was when I was talking about the emissions compared to coal, I was talking about just straight up waste to energy incinerators. But pyrolysis, fossil fuels are used to make plastic. And then the pyrolysis or the chemical recycling just kind of treats it like a plastic or like a fossil fuel again. But what is generated from it, a lot of times like the power that they count is like what they've turned the plastic into, which is a really crappy source of energy. And sometimes they use it back to power the incinerator, like to power the pyrolysis facility. So it's like, well, we wouldn't need the energy you're generating if you didn't exist because you're using the energy. So, really all of these, it's burning fossil fuels in a way. And
And
there's not going to be zero emissions. And even if you granted them that, yes, the pyrolysis facility in their delusional worldview made no emissions, you're still propping up the fossil fuel industry by allowing them to make plastic.
so can I ask one more question and then I'll open it up to everybody else. I'll stop. But what if if the plastics were plant-based?
So a lot of those, if it's got certain chemicals or plasticizers in it and things like that, it
Mhm.
may not qualify to go to a pyrolysis facility. But frankly, a lot of that stuff, like I don't bother with um, utensils that say they're compostable because a lot of times you don't know what you're getting. And, a shady manufacturer could put compostable on anything, right? Like they could make like, does anybody remember when, like, I forget where it was that they made a town called USA so that they could put made in USA on products. And then, like, Americans would be like, oh, it's made in the USA, but it was made in USA wherever overseas. So they could put whatever they want on there. It doesn't mean it's actually compostable. And so when I'm sending it, I know where my compost is going, which is to Sustainable Materials Management in Cortland. And I don't want Anthony Carbone and his crew having to pick my fake compostable fork out of the compost pile. So I just don't bother with it. And so with a lot of the plant stuff, same deal. And also, it's garbage, it's waste. If you don't have a compost, like it doesn't matter if something's compostable if you're throwing it in the garbage and it's going to a landfill. So I feel like we need to just do away with disposable stuff.
Just super quickly, I just want to add that we concluded that we were going to oppose it, first of all, because it relies on that feedstock of continued disposable plastic. Whatever they say, it seems like it's the plastic that has the most embedded energy in it to burn. So you're kind of locking in the continued production of that plastic. And also it results in a fuel that they were creating that's also going to have carbon emissions. So if that fuel is going to be used by trucks, let's say, those trucks are going to be emitting carbon dioxide, even if they were correct, which they may not be, about the emissions. So, okay, Paul, you had a point about the presentation or a
Oh, I had a
question?
question
Yeah,
for Dr.
sure.
Williams as well too.
Okay,
But yes,
go ahead, go for it.
hello, Dr. Williams. Always an honor to listen to you tell us what we need to do to step up and really help, rewrite the injustice that's been happening for a very long time. I just wanted to ask, I guess, because I know this is like a regional issue, a regional catastrophe that we need to empower like local leadership on and build that coalition. A lot of us are being gaslit on what's happening. It's like they're calling it like an energy production company, but if you look at the emissions report, we're putting a lot of scary things into the air. And I just wanted to ask, like, what do you recommend that like an organization like us, Sierra Club, or anyone that's part of like a community-based org or a neighborhood association could do? I guess to help strengthen the message getting out to amongst people that historically haven't considered themselves to be environmentalists or don't have the time or never took like an environmental science class, and like how do we expand our circles? Because I feel like we need to really bring in the everyday person so that we could really build up that coalition for advocacy.
Yeah, I mean it's a challenge, especially so here in Peekskill, we're the frontline community. And a lot of my neighbors are dealing with all those vulnerabilities. And so I feel like asking them to activate and find free time, especially right now, like people are losing their SNAP benefits. We're all freaking out that Section 8 money might be going away. And it's like when someone's worrying about homelessness, they don't have time for the waste system or whatever. But in Westchester County, at least, the way our waste system is set up is that we are all part, or like the vast majority, I think it's like 36 of the 43 municipalities in Westchester are part of Refuse Disposal District 1. So even though our own municipality might have like garbage trucks that say Peekskill or Ossining, we're all part of that refuse disposal district, and the county is the entity that's making the decisions and setting the policies. And even though we are municipalities, we're kind of, if we're part of that district, we're following the rules that they set up. So, in that regard, we need people from all over the county, from Yonkers to Yorktown and everywhere in between, all working and sending the same message to our county elected officials that, like, this isn't the solution for our waste that we want. We don't want people in Peekskill and surrounding communities breathing this stuff. And frankly, we don't want everybody in Yonkers having to deal with every truck trip to the materials recovery facility, right? Like we could make this a much more equitable process and a much more sustainable process if we all worked together. So that's kind of why we set up WAS as a coalition, because it's not like if Peekskill stops generating waste, problem solved. We'll still have that incinerator. So what people can do is get your local municipality to keep feeding this back up the chain and be asking the county, like I'm hearing from my community members, they don't want, you know, all the garbage going in the incinerator. They want curbside composting. And we did check with DEC. This county can mandate food scraps recycling just like they mandate plastics and paper recycling. So the county could do this. But they need to be hearing from everyone. And like one of the things WAS is doing is trying to meet with every county legislator before the budget season starts, just so that they're hearing again and again and again, like keeping this at the front of their mind, that we need this to be changed. Because frankly, like even if you even if you don't care about the public health or the plan or whatever, this is one of the oldest incinerators in the entire country. And it is just poor fiscal policy to just put blinders on and act like it's always going to be there. We need to be planning ahead, or if it fails, like in Florida, that one caught fire one day and it was so badly damaged. It was like, well, no, that's it. Incinerator's out of commission. What are we going to do if that happens? So
So,
it's just good fiscal policy.
so Renee, I do see you, but I just want to jump in with a related question from the chat. So the question is, what's been the response of Westchester County? What's their position on Wheelabrator?
Their position is that it has been updated and upgraded and everything's fine.
So you're getting a real resistance from the county executive and
Our board of legislators, they got the message. So, a couple years ago, legislator Erica Pierce put forth a single-use foodware ban. Even before the state banned plastic bags, Catherine Borgia pushed through or got a plastic bag ban or was working on that. Last year, they did $1 million or over $1 million for a compost pilot project to see like what it would take to take curbside composting countywide. So the board of legislators has gotten the message. It is our Department of Environmental Facilities, like the civil servants there, and our county executives, plural, George Latimer and Ken Jenkins, are not willing to hear this message. They're not willing to acknowledge the harm that's being done, and they're not willing to acknowledge the fiduciary responsibility that they have as the county executive to be looking forward to maintaining our infrastructure and putting in place the alternatives. It has been over 2 decades since a new trash incinerator was built in America. The average age that an incinerator is retired in this country is 25 years old. This incinerator is 41 years old and right next door to Indian Point. And like, if we didn't learn our lesson of just assuming something was going to exist forever and being caught unprepared from Indian Point, like, we deserve to get in trouble with this incinerator. So the county, if you run into Ken Jenkins anywhere, raise the issue of this trash incinerator and just let him keep hearing it. I do think we're up against the advice he's getting from the Department of Environmental Facilities, who really drank the Kool-Aid from the incinerator company and are giving him bad advice.
Renee, I know you've had your hand up for a while and been waiting patiently. Renee Tobeck, do you want to unmute to ask your question? Renee? Yeah.
Is it me? Okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering what we have to do to get curbside pickup for compostable kitchen waste and so forth. What do we have to do to get it curbside?
And if I
Throw
can
it
sort
out
of
in my
tag on,
yard, but I'm in a wheelchair now, so I can't throw it out the window.
and why does it seems to be so difficult to get
Yeah.
curbside pickup?
Renee, where do you live? What municipality?
Yonkers.
Okay. So, always they talk about money and they talk about expense. But I kind of, I mean, like, I get that it would be more expensive, but the thing is, we pay by weight for what we burn at the incinerator, and food scraps are the heaviest because they're very wet. So there would be some cost savings to compost it instead of burning it. And I think that the argument that, like, oh, we need new trucks and blah blah, it's like we already have the trucks going around multiple times. Like, one day they come get garbage, one day they come get recycling, then they can come get compost. So I
If they
think
had containers like they have for other kinds of things, if they had a compost container that they could just keep reusing.
Yep. So a lot of Yonkers already does have a drop-off location. But as you said, you're in a wheelchair. You're going to make some special trip with your little tiny bag of compost and get yourself to the drop-off. It's like, come on. So there is the Greystone Apartments in Yonkers. Yonkers did and does have a pilot curbside pickup program. And the Greystone Apartments, they did a thing where they got the city of Yonkers to allow them to have everybody in the building put their compost in one receptacle and they would come take it. And so they really kind of just proved it's doable. But the only other municipality that is doing it right now, I think, is Scarsdale. We just need the political will, I think, is really what's holding it up, right? Because I'm sure they said all the same things about recycling newspaper and recycling metal, right? Like,
Well,
oh, we can't do that.
They're saying basically the same sort of things about the sewage treatment plant, which stinks, which we've
Yes.
been working on, and it's not even in up-to-date situation, so.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more questions. Also, I just want to mention there's food scrap recycling in some of the Rockland communities too. But
So
still,
Renee, I would say talk to the city and tell them you want curbside. Tell them your pilot program worked in Greystone. I want it in my neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
okay, Marilyn,
We're still
then
trying to
Judy.
get a garbage can on the street so people don't throw this shit on our lawn.
Marilyn, and then Judy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I really have enjoyed your presentation and I've learned a lot more about incineration. Thank you, Courtney. I'm thinking about the composting. I compost in my backyard and just with the two of us, I would have a very small amount of compost to put out for any kind of curbside. And I wonder what's more efficient. It seems to me it would be better if I just compost in my backyard since I have that ability.
I think some of it depends on what you eat. So if you're a vegetarian, or you're a vegan, you can pretty much compost every single thing that you like any food scrap, right? But in my house, we are omnivores. And so we do have meat and bones. We have butter and things like that that can't go in a garden compost, but can go in the industrial compost. So we also have a compost bin, and we switched from composting our food scraps in our yard to doing it through a drop-off location, because it was easier, rather than me being like, why did you put that chicken nugget in the compost bin, and like fishing out the chicken nugget so that I could dump it in the yard. And so now it's just like any food like scrap goes in the bin, and it all goes in one place. So I think that would be it, up to you. And also it's like, if you are able to get to a drop-off location and it's convenient, I mean, that's part of why the county did a waste reduction study. And when the study came out, I was like, this is garbage study. Please go back and do something different. Because they were like, what's your barrier to using the household materials recovery facility? And it's like, well, I'm not driving to Valhalla with 2 AA batteries from my remote to recycle them. Like, maybe that's the barrier. Ditto with your compost, right? Like, if you're not going to get to the compost drop off, but you'll put it in your yard, go in your yard. But for me, like with my household of 4 and the things that we eat, we found it easier. And we also like have a freezer and room. So like we don't go weekly or every time it's full. We put in the freezer for a while and then make the trip. So I think people can kind of
So,
see what works for them.
Judy?
Well, could I have a follow-up question,
Sure.
please?
Sure, go ahead.
That was the question when we moved in here. I don't know how many, 10 years ago now, more years than that. And we started composting. What do you do with the meat scraps, and what do you do with the bones? The bones were the big problem. I think in a normal composting situation, some of the meat scraps and some of the other butter and stuff like that seem to work. It seems to be okay when I put them in my yard compost. My compost is not that particular. Bones are a different matter, and I have found a place where I can give them to the skunks and the possums who come and I don't know, crunch them all up. And while that may not be, um, I found that to work. So they have it, they're eating it, they chew it up, and I don't have any bone problems anymore because they take care of it.
Yep.
Judy?
Thanks. I've got like 3 questions. Sorry.
Okay, go for it. But maybe we should go a little more quickly, but
I'm just
yeah.
gonna, I'll read them all to you and you can answer them as you see fit. First is how to get people to separate out their food scraps. When I walk around the neighborhood, I can tell who doesn't because the garbage has crunched them and it stinks. So I don't know how to convince people to do it. 2, where is Pete McCart on the issue of composting? Since now that he's in the government, he's all, oh, it's fine. And is he aware, and is Ken Jenkins aware of what the Wheel Liberator actually costs the county and what it would cost to actually do composting and to divert everything, almost
Sure.
everything?
So for
But
the
you
first
could-
one on how to get people to compost,
Yes.
depends on the person, right? So sometimes I say, well, the county subsidizes. So we would save on our tax dollars if you compost those wet and heavy food scraps instead of our municipality having to pay to haul them. Or you could go with it won't stink, you'll have less garbage, you won't have to take it out as often. Sometimes the compost give back programs are useful. Like if the person's a gardener and they make the connection between like, oh, I can get this valuable compost from my food scraps. So you can feel them out, but those are some things that I've used.
So that would be a personal conversation with everybody.
Yeah,
Rather
or
than the,
putting the flyer, like if your municipality has a composting flyer, walk around and tape it to people's garbage can lids or something like that. Or go to your local conservation advisory council, encourage them to do help get the word out, that kind of thing. For Pete McCart on compost, it's a county issue, so he has not taken a strong stance. He is, I guess I wouldn't say he's opposed to the trash incinerator, but as soon as that air permit expired. He and Sandy Galiff, that's how long ago that expired, that permit
Yeah.
expired. He
Yeah.
and Sandy Galiff, who was our assembly member, came out strong immediately that there should be public hearings and everything. And Pete is opposed to pyrolysis, opposed to chemical recycling. So I assume he's also like not, he's well aware of the issues. His office has been awesome in advocating for us with DEC and following up, getting updates on permits. So he's really been wonderful on that. His office is definitely aware of the harms it's causing. Ken Jenkins does not seem to be well aware, and I don't know if that is because he is misinformed or uninformed or willingly like not wanting to find out this information. But he was the League of Women Voters, did a forum recently with him and Schulte, the Republican candidate for county executive, and Ken. There was a question about the incinerator, and he just was completely wrong. So he said that there is a 15-year contract. That is not true. It was a 10-year contract with an option for a 5-year extension. He also said that only 10% of what is burned at the incinerator is from Westchester County. That is also patently false. It is 75% of what is burned there. The county industrial development agency owns the property there and owns the incinerator. They contract with Wind Waste to operate it. So the county executive should definitely be more aware of the details of this. He is not and has resisted our efforts to educate him on these things.
So we should wrap up because we have we want to talk
Yep.
about the ballot proposal and endorsements. But just quickly, Suzanne Barkley, did you want to comment? I mean, you're very involved with Beyond Plastics, and was there another comment that you would like to make?
No, I just want to thank Courtney for an excellent presentation. We worked together on Beyond Plastics. And I was wondering if any community in New York State has a pay as you throw or pay as you go, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to do more digging and I just don't have time.
Yeah, I have never heard of one, but
Hmm.
thank you, Courtney.
Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. It was great to be on and
Thank you for
answer
the
questions.
presentation. It was really informative. I think
And I'm happy to send slides. And it's
Okay.
waspeakskill@gmail.org if anybody needs to reach me or with more questions, or if you've got a group and you want us to present. So I will log off.
This was excellent, and we really look forward to working together more closely on this. And we will be posting the presentation also online. We also have a YouTube channel. So yes, Judy, did you want to say something?
Would you send an email with recording link?
I guess we could. Yes,
That would
we
be
could send
great.
an
I
email.
would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, you're on our email list, I assume.
Well, I signed up for it, so anybody who signed up to get the recording.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
like to share it.
Okay, sure. I
Mhm.
think that sounds great.
Mhm.
So before we move on, again, I want to just,
Mary looks like she has a question as
oh,
well.
okay. Mary?
Yes, I don't have a question, but I have an answer to the question with any community in New York State has pay-as-you-go. Johnsburg, New York, in the Adirondacks, has exactly that. And it is a little controversial because we pay 15 cents a pound, but we actually end up paying 50 cents a pound. So because of the way we knock off the little circles on our $10 card. Anyway, I just want to answer that there are communities that are kind of into that, but it's a small community. So that's it.
I can
Thank you, Mary.
Very much.
I can see that one of the objections to it might be sort of an equity issue. Like if you have a larger family, you generate more trash. So I don't know what you do about
There
it.
are, I for time couldn't get into the all of the minutia, but there are like programs where it's like families can get the bags at the food pantry and things like that, so you can make it more equitable. Because yeah, it's kind of like sales tax. It's regressive in a way. So, but I'd much rather solve that problem than, kids with asthma and seniors with heart attacks. So
Amen to that. Yeah, no, this is one of those issues that we've been talking about for a long time, and we really need to see more concrete progress and
Awesome.
quickly.
All right, thank you
It's
all.
part of our carbon footprint, as you said. So this is an important piece of that puzzle. We can't solve reducing our emissions unless we are able to tackle this part of the problem too. So, okay, so moving on, before we want to talk about the endorsements and calls for candidates, and we want to talk about the ballot proposal, which is going to be on the back of your ballot. But before we do that, I just want to remind people that our next meeting is continuing the series on extinction, the crisis of extinctions and loss of biodiversity. And it's going to be, I think, fascinating. It's going to be with biologists talking about the unseen fungal networks beneath our feet. What are they? They're the basis of nearly all life, and also about how they too are threatened. So that's Monday, November 17th, online at 7 o'clock. So before Paul Presendu is here with
Yep,
us to talk about,
I'm here.
but just before we do that, I just want to mention to thank everybody who came out for the October 18th No Kings events. Thank you so much. I just also want to say this is not a one-time event. I'm sure everybody on this Zoom is very aware it's a marathon, unfortunately. We have to keep showing up. We have to keep making those calls. I know in Rockland County, there's a weekly protest at the corner of Middletown Road and Route 59. It's actually a lot of fun. It really raises your spirits. Suzanne, I don't know if you want to say a word for it, but just we're really people have a good time with it. It's really been terrific. And George, can you or somebody else mention the ones in the weekly protests in Westchester or in
On Saturday morning, there's
Oh,
there's a weekly protest in both Cold Spring and Mount Kisco, and in Rockland County in Nanuet.
right. And the one in Nanuet is also on Saturday from 12 to 1. It's 1 hour, which makes it very easy to come out. You feel like just coming for something quick, then I move on with my day.
And there's four at 4 o'clock on Saturdays in Mamaroneck.
Oh, great. Okay.
Great.
Every
Okay.
week, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So keep the calls, keep showing up. We really have to build a movement. And what I think an important part of building that movement is energizing people, the public, making them feel, yes, we are here and we're not going away and we're going to keep building the movement. So now we wanted to talk next about the upcoming election. We'll keep it short. We're trying to keep these meetings a little shorter than they were. And we want to talk about the ballot. Paul, I'd ask you to talk first about the ballot endorsement, the ballot
Yes.
proposal, because it's confusing to most people. So,
Yep. I think I sent a request so I could share my screen for.
okay. Mhm.
All right. Yep. So, hello everyone. I am Paul Presidew. I'm proud member Sierra Club, Lower Hudson Group, and I also am proudly supporting the political committee. Many of you may know Ed Berry, the political chair. I've been his co-chair. It's I guess our second year running, or second going to third year running, and it's really a great experience so far because now we know how important civic literacy is for all of us to be more effective as members of the Sierra Club. And this year, as you may know, we have elections that are occurring on November 4th, Tuesday, but also we have early voting, which is underway. So please don't hesitate to vote early or make a plan to vote because we want to make sure that us as a Sierra Club organization are doing the best to maximize our voter power or our potential to really hit the ballot box and vote on climate. And speaking on climate, an important ballot measure is here, which is to allow Olympic Sports Complex on the State Preserve. We are in favor of this, the Atlantic chapter. We are in favor of the proposal, but I just kind of created this one-pager overview so people could see both sides of the argument and how we could be sharpened in terms of our communication to convince people. So the ballot measure is, along ski slopes and related trail facilities on state park preserve land. They're currently proposing a site that is 1,039 acres, and this project will also require the state to add 2,500 acres of new forest in the Adirondack Park system. So, voting yes will authorize ski trails, the facilities in the Adirondack Forest Preserve, and voting no will leave the state constitution as is. And this is exactly like how the proposal says. Right here, what's exactly be written in the on the ballot. And we have pros and cons. The pros, we obviously could add promote tourism, recreation, and economic development in Essex County, which is needed. Also adds new protected forest use acreage elsewhere as a trade-off, which is more than double what the impacted site will be. But we do have some cons and concerns based upon what people are saying online, which is one, it sets a precedent for building in forest preserve lands, could affect ecosystems, wildlife, or environmental protections, or some may view it as a trade-off of acreage as insufficient for what needs to be done. But ultimately, the summary is like a yes changes the state constitution in one location to allow development in forest preserve, which requires offset, and whereas a no is to maintain things as is. Again, we are in support of this at the Sierra Club Atlantic chapter, and it's important that everyone flips the ballot over and votes in favor. Most people that know about ballot measures, unfortunately, are people that are energized to vote against it. So we really are trying to make people be aware, similar to how we supported awareness historically for the Green Amendment or the Environmental Bond Act. So right now, why is prop needed? From communication that we received from our state Atlantic chapter, and it's the Mon von Hovenberg complex has expanded over time into lands that are constitutionally part of the forest preserve, and which under Article 14 must be forever kept as wild forest preserves. Also, without the constitutional amendment, the existing and proposed development will not be fully authorized under the Forest Will Clause. Hence, this measure remedies that by explicitly allowing the use. It really is important that we know that there are constitutional things that are blocking the ability for us to really maximize potential right now for this being done. And also the offset acreage, the adding 2,500 acres, is intended to preserve and enhance the long-term wildlands of the Adirondacks, balancing development with conservation. So it's really showing that it can really support Essex County through a lens of environmental economics. And also it will help ensure that the Olympic Regional Development Authority stays within the physical boundaries as well as in the boundaries of activities it's allowed to conduct there. It also will allow for
I want to
historic.
give, because we are trying to keep, we are
Oh,
trying to
no
wrap up.
problem.
So I want to
Go ahead.
also, Ellen Banks is the chair, I believe, of conservation for the chapter. So I wanted to
Yep.
see her hand raised, and I wanted to give her a chance.
Sounds good, Chair Banks.
Go ahead.
I overlooked you. I'm being a bad vice chair for you right now.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's just that
Paul,
when I'm in screen share mode, it doesn't allow me to see hands raised.
Okay.
I just, thanks, Paul. That's a really excellent explanation. And when people just look at the title of this, they think people are going into the wilderness and chopping down trees to build new ski areas. That's not it at all. It sounds very confusing, but it is a land swap. It's really to correct somewhat of an error in the way the Olympic the Olympic complex was set up, that this should have been included earlier on. But to make it correct, it is constitutionally protected area. It's a land swap. It will increase the wilderness, the protected wilderness area in the Adirondacks, and the area they're talking about increasing on is not wilderness at all. It's a ski area. So please tell your neighbors to vote yes on this, even though it sounds like something it isn't. But I think that was an excellent explanation.
What about the issue of setting a precedent that, for like violating that forever wild provision?
I don't think it really does, because the Mount Hovenberg area, and probably many of you have been there, it is not a wilderness area. It's a recreational area adjacent to the town of Lake Placid. Incidentally, it's also adjacent to the John Brown Farm, which is well worth visiting. And it's not something being carved out of the wilderness the way it sounds like. It's basically expanding the width and some of the safety features and warm-up sheds and things like that in an already established ski area.
That's very helpful to know, because otherwise my instinct would be to vote against it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any questions from the audience about the prop? If not, Paul, I want to suggest in the interest of time, maybe just mentioning the endorsed candidates and then really focusing just briefly on the calls on behalf of the candidates.
Yeah, what I would mention is that if you visit our website for the Lower Hudson Group, it has our endorsements, especially for the
Great.
Westchester County Legislature races. We do have a phone bank that's being scheduled this upcoming Saturday at 11 a.m. If any of you are interested, I could either put the link into the chat so all of you could register. It's a tiny URL link. Let me just quickly. All right, that is it. If you want to read, copy, and paste that into your chat, or you could put your email and I'll add you to the Google Calendar invite. Ed and I are definitely trying to make sure we show that the Sierra Club, we do have a political arm to really help, show that we could do phone banks and really organize politically to get people into office. And we hope that that will allow us to stand taller when we're having conversations in environmental education, where we'll be taking at least in a more serious light, because they know that we are able to organize politically. But these are endorsed candidates, and this Saturday our phone bank will be for County Executive Jenkins and also for Terry Clements, who is the majority whip for the county legislature and was the sole vote against the land swap that happened for the Westchester County Airport, which showed that she was on the right side of history and on the right side of the concerns many people had, especially with PFAS and other issues in the region.
Great. Okay. So you got that was very helpful. Any questions or comments or other quick issues? Well, I mean, really, we're trying, we want to wrap up, but if there's any like quick announcement or something like that.
Yes, Peggy,
Yeah,
please.
sure.
I can send this out to my distribution list, but I cannot copy it from the screen. Can you send out a very quick email about the endorsements? I didn't have the list. And it's not listed on the website that I noticed.
It should, George, you want to address where are the endorsements on the website?
Yeah,
We
it-
did
it's
include it
very
in our
easy.
last email, and
Yes,
we can include it in the
it's
next.
very easy to get to the endorsements. On the homepage of our website, at the top of that page, there's a paragraph in there very near the top about getting to our endorsements. You click that, you make one more click, and you'll see the whole list.
Is the information about the proposal also on the website?
It's simply that we endorse the proposal.
Yeah, if you want to get the information about that that Paul was showing on the screen, that's on the Lower Hudson group. I'm sorry, on the Atlantic chapter, the statewide chapter website. I was able to find it Googling, but you have to kind of put in Atlantic chapter, just.
Actually, I think it's been added to the endorsement pages.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good, because I think it's important. That's an issue that I think most of us sort of feel a little bit more hesitant on until I heard the explanation. I kind of was thinking, ugh, I can't vote for this, but so I think that, the link to the information would be really helpful on that.
I placed
Well,
the link.
the link and an explanation would be even more helpful. Some
Yes.
kind of explanation. I mean,
Yeah, no. George, are we linked to the Lower Hudson group? I'm sorry, to the Atlantic chapter explanation?
Not directly, but I
But maybe
believe there's
we
an
can.
adequate explanation on the endorsement pages on our group
Okay.
website.
Okay, so why don't we wrap up? I want to make sure to let people go in a timely way. So thank you so much for coming. Please come out to vote. Please come out to protest. Please call your congressmen, your senators. Keep those calls and the protests up. And we'll see you November 17th. Hopefully, don't forget the repair cafes on November 8th. both in Westchester and in Rockland County. And we'll see you November 17th for the next program in the series on extinctions. This one's going to be an explanation by a biologist about the fungal networks beneath our feet that sustain life. And thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time.